game of Quorsum is played on a square grid made up of different lands, chosen at random so no two games can ever be alike. The classic version uses a 4x4 grid. Notice that each land has a certain number of buildings on it, and has both a light and dark side. Each player controls 2 matching horsemen, either light or dark, throughout the game. Once the lands are in place, each player rolls a pair of dice. The player with the higher total gets to make a big choice. Either he can select the starting spots of the 4 horsemen, 1 on each corner, and let his opponent take the first turn, or he can claim the first turn instead and let his opponent select those 4 starting spots. Each horseman's homeland is the corner opposite his starting spot. The goal of the game is simple: be the first one to maneuver both your horsemen to their homelands. As soon as you do this, you win the game. Wherever they might travel, the horsemen are always kept facing their homelands. Time in Quorsum is passed in seasons, which players alternate. The player with the first season controls the 2 black horsemen, and his opponent controls the 2 white horsemen. When it's your season, you have 4 dice, which you can assign to whichever actions you choose. And there are only 2 kinds of actions. First, you can try to move one of your horsemen along a path of lands. Horsemen move orthogonally onto adjacent vacant lands. But most importantly, a horseman on a light land can move only onto another light land, and vice versa. Thus, since this horseman starts on a dark land, he will spend the entire game only on other dark lands. Here, this horseman is on a light land, and has no legal moves. Of the 4 adjacent lands, 2 are occupied by other horsemen, and the other 2 are not light, so they're off limits to him. Here, this horseman is on a dark land, and has a nice long path of dark tiles. He can try to advance this season, or he could also try to move 1 land to the right. The second action, besides moving, is trying to change a land from light to dark or dark to light. It can be any land without a horseman on it. Now, this is important. If you succeed in changing it, that land cannot be changed back until your next season. So, if your opponent tries to change it in the very next season, don't let him. And of course, you also cannot change a land that he has just changed in his last season. So here are just a few typical options with your 4 dice. Let's say it's your season and you've got the black horseman. You could assign all 4 dice to try to move this horseman, or just 3 dice to move it and the other die to change that land in the corner. Or maybe you don't want to move it all this turn, and you can try to change these 2 lands with 2 dice apiece. Or you could spend a die to try to change that land, and the other 3 dice to try to move that horseman, if the changing succeeds, of course. You could even spend 1 die on 4 different actions. Every season is full of hundreds of possibilities, each with a different degree of risk and reward. Once you've assigned your 4 dice, it's time to roll them and see whether your actions have succeeded. You can attempt your actions in any order you'd like. Both moving and changing work the same way. First, look at the land you're trying to change or move onto, and count the number of buildings on it. Then, roll the dice you've assigned to that action. In order to succeed, one of those dice must come up with at least that number of buildings. So in trying to change this land with 4 buildings, this roll succeeds because of the 5. But this roll would fail because none of the dice show 4 or more. When moving along a path, you have to specify, just before rolling, which land you're attempting to move to. You move 1 land at a time, and for each successive land, you get to re-roll only the dice that have just succeeded. So in this case, you're trying to move your horseman to that land with 3 buildings on it. You roll your dice, and you have succeeded with all of your dice except for that 2. So you move your horseman to the land, you take the 2 out of there, and with the remaining 3 dice you can keep moving. You specify that you want to move next to that land with 5 buildings, you roll, and you have succeeded again because of the 6. So you move your horsemen, and you can keep going. You take the 2 unsuccessful dice out, and with your last die, you decide to try to move to the land with 2 buildings, and you've failed, unfortunately, and your season is over. Now sometimes, failing at one of your actions may make another intended action impossible, so in that case, those dice are simply wasted. At any time, you can decide not to attempt a certain action after all, and simply end your season. Once all your actions are resolved, the last thing you do is check for progress. By the side of the board is a counter. You can use the green discs included in the treasure chest collection and keep them stacked, or simply use a standard die like this one. The count at the beginning of the game is 0. You can use the 6 on a die for that. If neither of your horsemen moved closer to his homeland this season, then you move the count up by 1. But if a horseman did move closer, then you reset the count back to 0. The players keep alternating seasons until the game is over. Now Quorsum can end in 2 ways. As soon as one player has moved both his horsemen onto their homelands, the game is over and he wins. But if the count ever reaches 6 before this happens, then the game is immediately over and the winner is the player with the horsemen closest to his homeland. Just count the number of lands the horsemen would still have to move to get home. If a tiebreaker is needed, then compare the player's second horsemen to each other. Now you know the rules of Quorsum, but this is only the beginning. You'll want to check out our other tips and strategy and sample games on the Quorsum channel. Till then, thanks for watching, have fun, and good luck.